have seen? We have seen try catch block. Day before yesterday we have seen what is the exception, what is the type of the exception, and how we handle the exceptions. So yesterday we have seen how we can use try catch finally block to handle the exception, how we can use this try catch finally block in the UiPath, and how you handle the exceptions. So exception, to handle the exception we need to concentrate, or we need to search on like two things. We need to concentrate on two things. First part is like we need to identify the issue, and second part is we need to resolve that issue, right? So this is exception handling is like combination of these two part. To identify the issue we need to handle, or we need to use try catch finally block mechanism, right? And later we'll resolve that issue. Okay, today we will see what is throw, what is rethrow, and other part, right? So before that until now we have seen technical exception, right? If any technical exception is occurred, then how we handle the exception, right? So today, before starting out the session, or before go with this throw activity, first we will see what is the business exception, right? What is the second type of exception is called as the business exception, or you can say business rule exception, right? Business exception or business rule exception. So what is that? So business exception is a valid business case, or it's a valid, right, which we need to handle. Business exception. So what kind of exception, or what type of use cases are required? For example, you are automating so many you can say files, or we are automating so many, or we are collecting so many PDF files. So in PDF file, for example, there are lot of you can say things which you are considering for automation. For example, invoice ID. And if I got some invoices, for example, in between 1000 to 2000, we need to consider that invoices number, or that invoices as a, you can say, exceptional invoices, or a different you can say different invoices. So in this case we can consider this scope of this automation, or this automation is called as the business. We can consider this type of exception is a business exception. This is a valid business case. We need to handle anyhow we need to handle this type of exception. So this is a valid business case, or you can say this is the valid business cases, right, which we need to handle. So how we will see how we can handle that. Okay, throw is nothing but, so what is the throw? That is fine. The business rule exception is like it's a valid business exception. Throw now if I want to create any exception manually, or you can say from my site, or from code site. What means I am creating that exception. So manually I am creating that exception. Manually I am creating the exception with help of the throw activity, right? With the help of the throw activity. How we can see that? So technically we will see how we can create that throw activity, and how we handle the business exception, right? Now for example, what I'll do, I'll delete yesterday's example, right? And now for example, I'll just take two variables here, or I'll simply take one variable here basically. Okay, for example, control K var int 1. Okay, and here is like, this is my integer value. Okay, now this integer value, it's like, for example, 78, or you can say 90. It would be anything like 10, 20, 19, 16. It's a range of you can say 10 to 20. So but I know ki anyways this 90 value is also come to my program, which we need to handle as a business exception, right? So with help of the throw activity, how we can handle that we will see, right? So how we can handle that, I'll just take one if activity here. Now if my var int value is equal to 90, right? For example, this condition is occurred for me, or this condition is came for my bot. If this condition is occurred for me, or this condition is came for my bot, now how I need to handle this exception? So that's what I'll use throw activity. Which activity I need to use? THROW, throw. Throw, right? Throwing, that means I'm throwing that. Usually in cricket we are throwing the ball, right? So same way here also I'm throwing my exception. So that's what I have used this throw activity here, right? So how this activity looks like? Throw. It's a simple throw, right? So I'll just put the throw activity here inside this throw activity. Now this throw activity, when this throw activity is used, right? So this throw activity is used in both way, right? In technical way or technical exception, if I want to handle, there also I can use the throw activity. And if any business exception is occurred, then also I need to handle the throw activity, or I need to use throw activity. Okay, so in our case, in here I need to handle the business exception, right? So for that we have some technical syntax to write the code of the throw. So that's technical syntax is like, I need to put first, I need to drag and drop that activity inside my code, and later what text or what technical thing which I need to pass. So that technical thing like new business rule exception, which is my class, and the bracket. Now I'll just simply pass the message, manual message. Like for example, in our case, the case is a business case, or I'll simply put the value is 90, right? So here what I need to do, simple, I need to pass, or I need to simply use this new space. New is used, as I said, new. Why this new is used? New is used to instantiate on of an object. So for example, if I'll use var a, var integer, or for example I'll use integer a is equal to 10. This is my programmatical simple. I am creating one variable which is type of variable integer value, and I am assigning this 10 value to this a variable. So at background I need some memory for allocation of this 10 number, right? So to allocate that memory, this new keyword is basically used to instantiate the object of an variable. Like that we can consider it, right? So automatically, in this case, automatically once I create the int a, automatically 2 bytes is reserved for this 10 value, right? So here I no, did not write this new keyword intentionally in my program, but here this is the syntax. So to create some memory for my business exception which is occurred here, so that's why this new keyword is used. This is a technical syntax. Okay, so new space. Now just concentrate here, whichever existing keyword is available, so that keyword is available in the blue line. If you see, this is the blue, that means this is the existing keyword, new. See, new, this is not, I am not writing that keyword from my end. Okay, so that's what new, right? New, again I am handling business exception. Which exception I am handling here? So I am handling business exception. That's what I need to write a class called as the business rule exception. Which class I need to write, or I need to put here? So that is business rule exception. Which class I am using here? Business rule exception. Okay, so business rule exception, right? And inside this business rule exception, if I want to pass, this case is a business case, comma, value of case is 90. It's for me. Okay, now this keyword, right, whichever I am putting inside this double quote, this is come in, you can say, in a blue line. This is not a keyword, this is the, I am putting some message here manually in double quotes, right? So this is not a keyword, this is a sentence which I am providing here, right? So here if you see here, now new business rule exception, this case is a valid business case. That means I'm throwing that. Okay, then that's fine. Now my condition is uh, fine. I have put this throw condition, or I am putting this throw here. Now my program is ready for me. Now what thing I need to do here is, again, now this sequence I need to put inside the try catch block, because this is mandate one, no? So whenever I need to handle the business exception and the technical exception, whichever sequence, whichever workflow, or whichever program which I need to handle, whichever program I need to handle the business exception, the whole program or whole workflow or whole sequence or whole XML file I need to put inside the try catch block. Okay, now here we need to handle both exception. Either system exception is occurred, I need to handle the system exception, I can use system.exception, and this is a variable of that system exception, right? Again, here I need to handle the business exception, right? So for that, from here, browse for types, I need to use one class which is called as the business rule exception, right? UiPath.core.business rule exception. This is the class for business rule exception. So I'll just choose that exception. Again, this is the variable of this class, right? Again, to handle that, or to catch that exception variable or that specific you can say step, I am using this log message. Log message, why this log message is used? To log something, right? I am writing the messages with help of the logs. Otherwise, if I am not using any message, like I am not using any log message, if I am not using any write line, and I am just sending, I am only, for example, guys, one second. Hello? अरे मी जरा क्लास मध्ये तुला कॉल करतो क्लास संपल्यावर, ठीक आहे? हां हां. Okay, so if I want to write the log, if I want to print log message in somewhere, then I need to use log. Without log message, if I'm writing any code, and in future if I'll publish that code on the orchestrator, right, and if I'll run the bot, so I never know ki what action my bot is performing, right? My bot will execute, but and if any particular case, if my bot is failing, so there also I am not having anything to identify, or I don't have anything to troubleshoot on that, right? So log message is very important activity, right? So that's what. Now here I am handling the error message, so I'll choose error here. Okay, okay, so I'll just choose error, and here in the double quotes I'm using the business exception is occurs at, and inside this I'll just put plus out of this double quotes, and here I'm simply using exception dot to string. Now it's completed. The same thing, I'll just copy this, and here inside this system exception or technical exception, I am putting the same log message. Only difference here is, I am, instead of this business exception, here I'll put technical exception, for example. Okay, the technical exception or simple exception, the exception occurred at, that's the same message I have put it here. Okay, and in finally I'll simply use simple I'll just put simple message like I am inside the finally. Okay, and here this is a simple information, that's what I have just choose info for information, right? And this is my program. If, and for example I have something like some write line or some any other program which is available here, right? Like for example I have multiple activities here, and in this program if I'll got the technical exception, so already I have written the technical exception code here. So if any technical exception is occurred, this code will execute, and I'll able to identify where that technical exception is occurred. And if I'll got the business exception, so that's what I have write the business rule exception code as well here. So anyway, either if I'll got technical exception or if I'll got the business exception, both exception will handle here. In technical exception, system exception will handle. In business exception, business rule exception is will handle that. Okay. Now we'll see how this throw activity looks like, or how this business exception is you can say handle that exception, right? So here I'll just debug it. Okay, I'm not running the bot, I'm just simply click on the this step into. Okay, now if you see var int is equal to 90, so I'll just go inside this if look 90, and now this is valid business case, right? So this throw, that means this throw activity is executing now. And if I'll click on this throw, you will see this is my business exception one. See, this case is a business case, value of case is equal to 90. Again, if I'll click on this step into, again if I'm to click into step into, step into, step into, right? Now step into. Now if my bot will run on the production, or you can say if my bot will run here in this particular case, if my bot will run, so in log messages I will get these messages. For example, this case is a business case, value of the case is equal to 90, right? If you see, the business exception occurred at a particular case, like the case is a business case, value of case is equal to 90. Now just consider this in this format, right? For example, we have, right, for example we have 100 use cases, right? Okay, now just consider in this way. For example, I have some data like this. Okay, serial number. Okay, so serial number, right? And here I'll have some, you can say, invoice numbers which I need to perform: 101, 102, 103, like that, 104. If I want to proceed 100 records, right, with help of my automation, so my bot will pick all these things and he will automate, or he will okay, fine. So now what happened, now once my automation will start, and if my whole automation will finish, at the end I want to understand key out of 100 how many got failed due to business exception, how many got failed due to technical exception, and how many was successfully executed, right? So that's what I have put it, this whole, you can say, exercise, like try catch block, I have put it through activity, I have put it technical exception there, right? Now for example, my first was executed successfully, so I'll put message like successful, right? Again, if I'll have the second as well as a successful, so I'll put the success message here, success message here. But unfortunately, if I'll got any technical exception here, so I'll just mention is this is a technical exception, technical exception here, right? Again, for example, this got executed successfully, this got executed successfully, this got executed successfully. But here again, if I'll got a business exception, right, so I'll put the message as a business exception with this message, valid business case, whichever message we have, right? So that message I'll put here, right, valid business case, right? Again, if I'll got this business exception here, again if I'll got this business exception here, so this is my dashboard for me, right? At one time, out of this 100 messages, now I can able to easily understand, out of this is my success, this is my success, this is my success, this is success, this is also a valid business case. That means I don't require to change anything here, because this is a valid one. So out of this you can say 10 invoices, this is my business exceptional case, which is a valid one, right? This is a valid business case, right? So only what I need to do here, I need to only look into this specific, you can say, invoice, or this is this particular, you can say, record. And here if I'll got a technical exception, with help of the try catch block, I'm getting that technical message as well, right? So what I need to do, again I'll just copy that message, I need to understand that message, and I need to again go inside my code, and I need to resolve that specific issue, and again I need to run my bot. Then what happened, then in the next run, this after deploying the bot again, now if I'll again run the bot, now at the second time this message or this technical exception is also go away. Now again, now this invoice or similar kind of invoice will got a success, you can say, execution. Now we have all success execution with me, we don't have any technical exception here. So in this way we have handle, or we need to handle the exceptions, business exception, technical exception, right? So here if you see, again we'll see little bit on the throw activity, right? So why the throw activity is used? When I need to create my own business exception, right? If I want to create my own business exception, because I know this case will happen anyway, but that means when I automate my automation, my client itself suggest me you will get this type of you can say cases, so just consider that type of cases as a business exception or business case. Technically you do how you want to do that, okay? So I know this case will happen to me, so that's what I have just create one throw activity, right? I have just put it one throw activity, and inside that I have used use new space business rule exception, and I am putting this layman message or a generic message. I have put it in general. This message also will get from the client will send this message to me, right? So I'll put it that message here, right? And now if I'll execute this, then with help, and this will happen only in this particular case. Like for example, if that value is 90, then and then only I will get this exception on this 19th message. If I have any other value, now this throw activity will not execute, right? So this will go in the else block, and execution will go in a success mode. Okay, understood. So throw activity is basically used if I want to throw some message to you can say in a to the out of program, or if I want to create my own business exception message, then we can use throw activity. Throw activity is used in both the cases. If I want to create technical exception, there also I can use throw activity. If I want to create business exception, there also I can use throw activity, right? So throw activity is very important. Now we will see rethrow, right? So we have seen try catch finally block, we have seen throw activity as well. Again we have one activity called as the rethrow, right? So sometimes we have one question in the interviewer. So interviewer asks, what is the difference between throw and rethrow, right? So before that we'll see what is the rethrow, rethrow. Okay, now to understand that, I'll create a single program here. Okay, now for example I have I'll just create a simple program, like I have one sequence, right? Sequence 1, and again I have for example sequence 2, right? So this is my main sequence, and inside this main sequence I am using this sequence 1, right? And inside this sequence 1, usually this is the way when we create a real-time projects, right? This is my main, and inside this main file I have put it all the other sub files. This is my main, or this is my main trigger point, right? So inside this I have one, you can say, another sequence, and inside this sequence there are also other sequences or other files is available here, right? Now just consider, for example, in the sequence 2 I have, now what I need to do to handle the exceptions, right? To handle these exceptions, what I need to do, I need to put all the sequences inside the try catch block. So for that I am putting this sequence 1 inside the try catch block. Again here also in this sequence 2, again I'll put this sequence 2 inside this try catch block, and this sequence 2, if I want to put something, so here also I'll just put this sequence 2 inside the try catch block. Okay, now if I'll go with this main, okay, or if I'll in this sequence 2, if I got some exception like technical exception, just consider in this way, if I'll got any technical exception, okay, if I'll use click activity, right? If I'll use click activity, right, and here I'm I need to I'm what I'm using here, for example, but basically I'm intentionally I'm creating the wrong URL here, right? I want to produce this exception, right? Business exception. So intentionally I'm putting some exception here. Okay, so that's why if I'll execute this, okay, so inside this I am putting like system exception. Okay, now it's gone away. Similar way in the sequence one I am putting system exception because I am handling the system exception. And here also in this try catch I'm using the system exception. Sorry, because I'm handling the system exception, right? Now just consider if I'll got any exception here inside this sequence 2, right? And if to handle that, what I need to do? So inside this exception I need to write this log message again and again. Again and again means the same log message I want to write here as well, right? In sequence 1 also I need to write this log message. So for example I have multiple files, right, like say sequence 1, sequence 2 until sequence 10. So each and every time to handle or to catch that exception I need to write this log message or this whole exercise again and again here inside this exception message. So this is a repetitive work which I don't require or I don't want to do this repetitive work. So to avoid that, what I'll do, instead of this log message, so simply I'll put rethrow. Okay, this is a simple activity if you see, and this rethrow activity is used inside the exception block only. Okay, this exception this rethrow activity is used in the exception block only, because this is what this activity does or what this activity do. So whichever exception is thrown, this rethrow activity throw this exception to the outer, you can say, sequence. We will execute that this whole program, then you will get the better idea. Okay, so here also what I'll do, I'll use this rethrow activity. Instead of putting the log message activity or instead of putting that log activity here and write that code again and again, I am putting this rethrow activity here inside this sequence 2, inside this sequence 1, and in the main I'll only use the log message. Right, now here I'm putting like the exception is occurred at this place. Okay, and here plus I'll use exception dot message, right, and here simply I'll use error, like log type is equal to error. Simple. Now if I am not using the rethrow, to handle or to catch that, what I need to do, I need to write that log message here. Also here as well, if I'll have the multiple flow, the same activities, the same repetitive code I need to write again and again here. Now instead of that, here I'm using the rethrow activity. Right, now for example we'll execute this. Let's see how this rethrow activity works. So before that, so I'll intentionally put the wrong you can say selector, so because I need to create the exception, right? Sorry, so I'll stop this. Okay, we'll debug this program to understand this rethrow activity more. Okay, instead of this we'll debug this. Okay, so we'll execute or we'll debug this. So here if you see, again step into, now my control go inside the sequence. If I'll click on this step into, now again if I'll control go into the sequence 2, because in my main we have sequence 1 and inside the sequence 1 we have sequence 2.xml file. So my control go inside the sequence 2. Now I am inside the sequence 2, right? I am inside the sequence 2, and if this click activity, if I am trying to execute this, basically this activity is failing here, and once anything is failing, so my try catch block will handle that. Now my control will go inside this exception block. We will see how that will happen. See, now this activity is failing here. Now if I'll click on this step into, now my control will go inside this exception as usual, or you can say as expected, right? Now here if you see, I have used rethrow. If you see, thrown an exception previously caught in an exception handling blocks. Now again if I'll execute this step into, right, now again it will go inside this sequence one's rethrow. And again if I'll click on this step into, now inside this exception, now I am logging this message here. If I'll click on this step into, now this whole program is looking in this way. So now with help of this, you can say log messages, I can easily understand in this is my first, you can say, could not find the U element correspond to the you can say selector. That means some selector is not properly written, right? So at which activity or at which step my bot is failing? So if you see sequence 2, so in this sequence my bot is failing, right? So again if I'll just go down and first sequence 2, if you see this log message was sequence 2, then you can say again sequence 1, this sequence 2 is failing, right? So sequence 2, then sequence 1, and again I'll caught that message in a, you can say, sequence 1, or you can say inside the main block. Right? So rethrow is using to throw the existing message to my outer sequence. I'm with help of this rethrow activity, I'm throwing this technical exception to again inside the sequence 1. Here also I'm rethrowing it. I'm again throwing that message outer of that sequence, and here I am using the log message. I'm logging these messages inside this main sequence. Right? Now if I am not used this rethrow activity here, then what happened? So each and every time I need to write this log message activity here as well, inside this exception, inside this sequence 2 as well, inside the sequence 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is I'm doing repetitive work. So instead of that, if I'll put the rethrow activity, so it will rethrow the already thrown message. Rethrow the already thrown message. That means rethrow the already thrown message. This is the technical definition. But I am rethrowing, or I am throwing the log message to the you can say either you can say existing activity or the outer activity as well. No issues. Here also I am throwing the same message to my previous activity or previous flow, and here I am using, with help of the log message, I am logging that specific activity here. So this rethrow activity you can use everywhere. If you want to use this rethrow activity for the technical exception, you can use that. For the business exception, if you want to use, you can use the rethrow activity for the business exception as well. Right? Now if I want to, if I'll got any business exception, so here what I'll do, I'll simply use business rule exception, and I'm simply use rethrow. Okay, I simply put rethrow. So here also what simply I'll do, I'll use business rule exception and simply I'll use rethrow, and here what I'll do here I'll just use a business exception, and here inside this business rule exception, now I'll simply put log message activity. Now this is a simple demo we are seeing, but actually in real projects, in exception handling, there are a lot of things which we need to write. We need to write a specific screenshot. I need to take some specific screenshot where exactly my bot is failing. So that code also I need to write. right? There are a lot of things which I need to write. Basically there are a lot of things which we need to write inside this exception handling mechanism, right? So again, if I want to write this whole exercise again and again, that means it's not a good practice, or you can say it's not a good way for a programming. So to avoid that, I am using this retroactivity, right? And here if I use this error message, now here also I'll use like the business exception occurs at and plus again this same, right? This is my variable, so I'll use exception dot message, right? So in this way our whole program will ready for me. If I'll got any technical exception, so with help of this rethrow, it will go here, it will go here, and again inside this message I am catching that exception. If I'll got any business exception or technical exception, so it will rethrowing that messages here, in rethrowing that message in here, and inside this main I am catching that messages. Okay, all good.